Hello watch enthusiasts and welcome to Watch Chronicler. A few weeks ago I presented Horage and the collaboration which I have with them. In that video I discussed why I'm keen to work with this brand over the next few months to outline what I suspect will be a breakthrough for the industry. To learn more about this collaboration and Horage in general, take a look at my first video about this collaboration with them. A point which I made in that video was that I would neither recommend a watch of poor quality nor a marvellously made one which couldn't be serviced or maintained. On the other hand, I viewed it as my responsibility as a journalist and a YouTuber to present a product which I view as a potential technical game changer across the watch industry. And this very much seems to be the case with the Horage K1 movement, with its silicon components, impressive specifications, and very new approach to manufacturing. Before I begin, do remember to like, share and subscribe, and head over to watchchronicler.com for daily articles on new releases and plenty of other themes in the watch world. For watch lovers of photography, take a look at our Instagram page where we post carefully curated photos and where you can be the first to know about new videos, podcasts and articles. At the moment, the watch industry is in a state of change. For more than half a century, most watch brands have not produced their own movements, but have instead focused on the dials, cases and overall construction. And I must stress that there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. The expertise needed to develop a movement is not necessarily worth the cost for instance, a professional dive watch brand. Here funds may be better spent upon innovating in other areas. But with that being said, we are left with a problem. As brands use third-party movements, they become reliant upon certain suppliers, such as ETA or Sellita. And in recent years it's become increasingly difficult to get hold of these movements, whilst those offered are the product of a movement architecture still hailing from the 1960s and are really in many ways in need of development. Produced in Switzerland by THE+, a collaboration of the companies Teos and Horage, the K1 is a movement conceived to answer these issues. Its format as a movement is not to pursue revolution, but rather evolution. Whilst visiting Horage's facilities in Biel in Switzerland, it was impossible to ignore the sense that a very pragmatic approach was taken to movement design. Looking at in-house movements across the industry, many fall into a manufacture style of production, where the skill of a watchmaker is imperative to make a movement work correctly. However, Horage have instead focused and considered on the production of a movement with tight tolerances to allow for a new style of production. This industrial movement is prepared, assembled and finished by deviating from the idea of a watchmaker at his bench and instead incorporating the watchmaker into a production line. Of course, skill is still necessary to make such movements, but it's applied with a modern touch of efficiency from very beginning to end. Technically speaking, this movement takes the same pragmatic approach to get the very best out of its size. Conceptually, K1 was intended to fit watches normally using the ETA 2824 or 2892 movements, yet needed to have superior specifications. In diameter it matches the 25.6mm width of these movements, and with small seconds, a large date and power reserve indicator, which would require a thick additional module for ETA movements, it's only just thicker at 4.95mm. Where improving upon what's already known is concerned, Horage have made a point of rectifying known issues in current movements. A clear example is the use of unidirectional automatic winding rather than bidirectional winding. This may at first seem like a drawback, however when bidirectional winding transitions from winding in one direction to the other, it moves freely for about 15 degrees before engaging. As a result, with small movement of the wrist, the rotor may not wind at all. In this light, the unidirectional winding system makes sense, and also avoids the chronic unreliability often seen in reversers for winding systems. To enhance this, the rotor used in the K1 is tungsten, so as to have greater mass. With these dimensions, achieving the desired specifications of a long power reserve, formidable accuracy and complications was not simple. For comparison, the closest movement on the market, in terms of features, production and specifications, is the Tudor MT5621 as used in the Tudor North Flag. Despite having fewer features, it gives a 70-hour power reserve with a diameter of a full 33.8mm. In order to offer comparable specifications with 65 hours of power reserve, Horage have employed Omega's choice of beat rates, 7 ticks per second or 3.5 Hz. Even so, Omega's 8800 series movement, which remains slightly bigger than the K1, only gives a 55-hour power reserve. And so more needed to be done. In this endeavour, Horage have used silicon components to form the escapement. In doing so, they've utilised the benefits of designing a bespoke movement too. So where other brands have to settle for escapement components which are commercially available, and these can be large and cumbersome to fit the widest range of applications, Horage have been able to design their very own. Produced in silicon wafers, THE+ are able to make silicon escape wheels and pallet forks to the finest of tolerances and with the low friction and amagnetism of this material. Of course, this doesn't account for the features available on the K1 though. Generally, if you want to make a complicated watch, you have two options. Either you devise a movement from scratch with the necessary functions, or you add them later as modules. Modules, however, add considerable thickness and tend to be fiddly to service. For this reason, the large date, power reserve indicator and small seconds are all built into K1 movements from scratch in order to offer these features without any drawbacks. Now at this stage you may be asking yourself whether this movement has been tested adequately and whether it will be reliable as a replacement for these well-proven ETA movements. This is a particularly important aspect when Tudor, for instance, had trouble with teething problems with their own in-house GMT movement despite their technical know-how. This is a question which I myself had when I visited the company, and in response I was shown the fact that over more than a decade this movement has existed in 3 production runs with thousands made. With each generation, issues were ironed out to the point where Horage assured me that no design issues remain, exactly what you need to hear from an everyday movement. Now we come to the rather subjective aspect of aesthetics. Whilst it may seem strange to judge the aesthetics of a movement, it isn't entirely without cause. Because when we buy a mechanical watch, whether an affordable Seiko or a high horology piece, we're inevitably drawn to the wonder that is the mechanical movement. Across the Horage range itself, different executions are available on, for instance, the 10th anniversary Autarch. However, all feature delicate but distinctly modern finishes, such as the brushed and patterned surface of this example, whilst the tungsten rotor is appealingly decorated. I particularly like the bevel which runs all around the movement rim. In conclusion, it isn't every day that I have the opportunity to review a watch movement. However, considering the fact that this movement would constitute a major player across the industry in the hands of current and future partners of THE+, I'm glad to have been able to discuss it. Of course, the K1 isn't an answer to every question amongst watch movements, but I reckon that it might just answer some of the most important ones. THE+ also will be launching the K2 micro-rotor movement later in the year, which promises perhaps even more. Thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe. This is Armand from WatchChronicler.com. Out.